So I just got off the phone with my husband, and he's really going through something right now. So I was like, I'm gonna go make some coffee. It's probably gonna be loud on the video, but it made me really realize the importance of talking about grief with men. Men are taught to be the strong ones, be the protectors, be the providers, take care of the family, take care of the house, do all these things. They're also taught that showing any kind of emotion is a sign of weakness, and they have to be strong, which means not showing any sign of weakness, right? So I think it's important to point out the way we grieve differently. Men, there's no group of men out there that are getting together on Friday night or Wednesday afternoon to talk about all the bad things in their life. There's no regular meeting of a group of guy friends that get together and talk about painful things in their life. They don't get together and cry together. They don't get together and talk about emotions or feelings. Women traditionally do that, right? Wednesday afternoon, you're going to go meet your girlfriend, you're going to get your nails done, and you're going to talk about all of the horrible things that happened during that week and what you could do better, or, just how it made you feel. Men do not get together and talk about how things make them feel. They're taught more of this isolation, just isolate yourself and don't talk about it. Don't show any emotions. An acceptable emotion that they do show, and just to clarify, it's okay for them to be angry. It's okay for them to be rageful. It's okay for them to, basically have an attitude and storm off. And we say, yeah, well, he's going through something right now. So society-wise, culturally, we have accepted that as being okay to some degree, right? I'm not talking about the rageful person that, is abusive and stuff like that. We're not talking about that person. We're talking about the guy that's typically got it together, comes home, hangs out with the kids, you have a good relationship with, but not the abusive person. All right, just so that we're clear. And I guess another thing I should clarify is when I say grief, I don't just mean death, right? So in my husband's case, he lost a friend that was very close to him. Kid was pretty young too, like early 30s. So completely unexpected, right? So it's shocking, and it's somebody that he was pretty damn close to. But that's not the only loss. Like, men lose their children, men lose their wives, they go through divorces, they lose their parents, they lose their friends, their dogs, their cats, their horses, whatever it is, their jobs. It's a loss. It's painful. And where we would typically see a woman would grieve about something like that, and she would openly cry and express her emotions, men don't typically have that same opportunity to do that. So what does it actually look like when a man is grieving? One of the things we've already talked about, they channel the grief, those overwhelming emotions, they channel them into anger. Sometimes they may feel like someone else is at fault for the situation, and then they'll target that person. Like, let's just say in the case of a divorce, the guy might say, oh, well, this is all her brother's fault, because if her brother wasn't telling her whatever, we would have never gotten divorced. That could be one thing. In the case of an accident, whose fault was it? Like, who created this? Who was negligent? Who did something wrong that is causing me this pain? And how do I solve it? How do I end it? How do I stop it, right? Another way, unfortunately, that men deal with grief is drinking. They go within and they drink, they use substances, as not all men. I didn't say all men, so not all of them, but a lot. And it's their way of coping because they don't feel comfortable being able to say these things. And I'll tell you, like the whole myth, men don't cry. I work with a lot of men. I experience men crying on a weekly basis. Men do cry. They do not typically cry publicly because they've been taught that it's something to be ashamed of. All right. But men do cry and it is okay. And in fact, the older they get, the less control they have over that normal, natural response in us that creates tears, that overwhelming grief. So from what I've seen around the age 45 and up, there's less and less control to suppress. So that suppression mechanism, they're suppressing 40-something years of pain and trauma and grief and experiences. And that it's starting to break loose a little bit, and there's less control. So it may just be some tears, but the door's kind of breaking open. Another way that men typically handle grief is they get busy. They start doing things. They start having different projects. They start working on things, creating lists of things to do. So, your husband, maybe somebody who comes home and sits on the couch and watches TV after work, and all of a sudden this grief thing happened, and the next thing you know, he's like completely redesigning your whole garage, or he's out in the backyard building a shed that he's wanted for 10 years. Men typically dive into projects. They try to stay busy. The problem with staying busy is it's often hard for them to focus. So they want to focus, and now we're getting angry because I can't focus on this thing and I just want to get it done. But what's happening is that the emotion is interfering. They're trying to focus on, I need to get this done, but these thoughts keep coming in and they're distracted. And that happens because we can't ignore our emotions. Feelings are literal messengers. They're telling you that you feel pain, that you feel sadness, that something is wrong, something is missing, something is different. It's uncomfortable and you don't like it. That's what's happening with the distraction. There's some men who will tell you, I don't grieve, I don't get upset, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that they don't, because they do. We're all human. We all do. We all experience a pretty typical range of emotions, and grief and sadness happens to be one of them. The reason why a lot of men might say, oh, I don't even experience that, is because they don't recognize it. They're looking for these typical things that they see in other people, right? Becoming upset, crying, becoming rageful, maybe drinking, but they aren't recognizing, like, trying to stay busy is your way of dealing with grief. Having little arguments is your way of dealing with grief. Witch hunting people is your way of dealing with grief. Isolating is a way of dealing with grief. And the list kind of goes on. One of the tragic things about men not grieving and not feeling okay with grieving is, I believe it was in 2017, Harvard Medical School actually did a study. And what they found was men who are under a lot of stress, and grieving creates a level of stress in the body. So what they found is grieving, it's not just something that affects like your tear ducts. It affects the impact. It affects your internal, not the impact. It affects you internally. It increases the risk of heart disease. There's a lot of things, that stress impacts, and stress and grief impact. So when you suppress those emotions, you're not healing. And I'm not saying okay, let's go start a support group. Obviously, I would love that. I don't think many men would love that. In fact, the way I teach men to deep breathe is by, telling their wives to tell them your farts stink. And then they're like, I don't smell. But, there's like some tactics. So that's how I teach men how to deep breathe. But that's beside the point. We're talking about grieving. And when we're just suppressing these things, we're not actually healing. What we're doing is we're pushing it down as much as we can. And it is going to show up in other ways in your body. It is going to make you ill eventually. And I think that's why for men, that suppression ability, that whatever you want to call it, the rubber band, the tension rod, the whatever, it stops being effective at some point because it becomes so overwhelming. It's like having a bottle of soda and dropping a Mentos in it. You can drop it in a little tiny piece at a time and you'll get some bubble up and some bubble up. But eventually the whole thing's going to go in and we're going to have an explosion. And it's not, guys, it's not your fault. This is how you've been raised. This is how culturally you've been taught, is that you're not allowed to have these feelings. You've got to keep it together. You've got to be strong. It's not about you. It's about the other person. All of these things, it doesn't matter who it's about. If it impacts you and you're feeling something, then you're feeling something. So for my ladies, if you are in a relationship with someone who is experiencing grief and they're starting to pull away, you're going to feel some emotional distance. It's not about you. Stay focused. It is about the person that you're with. They're experiencing something that is overwhelming for them, and we just haven't set it up for it to be acceptable for men. For the guys out there, pay attention to what you're doing. If you're drinking, if you're starting projects, if you're using substances, if you're isolating yourself, call a therapist. If you don't have people to talk to, call a therapist. I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but call a therapist. You might not feel comfortable. There are support groups. You can try a support group. If that's not comfortable, call somebody. Do not let this eat you up inside. Talk. Keep talking. Don't stop talking. Work through it. Let the emotions out. Even if you do it alone in the shower, wherever you have to do it, like do it on your couch. I don't care where. Let the feelings come out. Let them come out. It's normal. It's natural. It's also normal to not, right? Because that's culturally what we've put in your head, is that it's improper. You shouldn't act that way. You need to be strong. You do not need to be strong. You're suffering from a loss. You're grieving. Crying is part of the grieving process. Feeling pain is part of the grieving process. And the best thing I can tell you is write. I know not a lot of people like to write, but write out what do you miss? What have you lost? What do you need to move forward? Don't spend a lot of time on what you wish would be different, but definitely acknowledge any regrets that you have. Acknowledge them, accept them, and promise yourself that you're not going to have regrets in the future. All right. But the most important thing you need to do is to take care of yourself and be okay with not being okay. As cliche as that sounds, that is true. Got to be okay with it, because if you're not, you're going to make yourself sick. That's what I've got. So until next time, stay safe. Reach out to a therapist if you need someone to talk to and you don't have anyone. Don't isolate. I have a feeling my dog drinking water is going to be so loud on the audio, so I apologize. She thinks she's a camel. She's not a camel. Okay. That's what I got, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're experiencing grief and pain. And I'm sorry that the world has not been set up to properly support you, and that there are far too many substances available that are just going to make things worse. It's not what we need. We don't need any substances. We need listening, acceptance, love, compassion, and no isolation. All right? So, until next time, stay safe.
Hey, Dean, back down to your performance. Working on Chris's car. No, I don't know what happened. I recorded a bunch doing the mini tubs, and it all was a blank white. So that was cool. But where we're at with the car now, the back end is pretty much, as far as parts going on, it's pretty much all done. We got the Dean back down to performance. Today, doing a quick update on Chris's Mustang, the Capri. Sorry. So what we got is, where we left off was the back floor was cut out. So we went ahead and we got most everything finished up in the back end. There's a few little things left to tidy up, but get some of the junk out. It's not really junk, but